Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna DeShawn here, and I'm really excited for our interview today. We've got Peggy Gillespie with us, who is the creator of this wonderful book called Authentic Selves. And we've actually got two folks who are in the book as well. Lana and Fresh are joining us. What's going on, y'all? And I'm excited to learn not only more about the book, but also more about y'all, because I think there's so much going on in the world right now. We can't not talk about that. But also, I think that you all telling your stories and sharing who you are allows folks to see the humanity in all of us, that I think is really the missing thread in all of these things that are happening today, politically, socially, et cetera, et cetera. But Peggy, you embarked upon Authentic Lives, this amazing book, telling the stories of trans and non-binary folks. Why in the world did you do this?
Well, when I was working through like 12-hour days, I questioned that as well. But my dedication and passion for justice and sharing these remarkable people, it just kept the energy going even at my now 75 years of age.
Yes.
I have a, thank you. I have a non-binary offspring who's 36, named Jay. But that wasn't really the inspiration because I started it before Jay decided to use they, them pronouns. And I'm still working, I have to admit, still working on trying
All
to
right.
remember for my own kiddo. And I mean, I work really hard at that. So that is, for me, I started years and years and years ago, 35 years ago, to create an exhibit, and then it became a book called Love Makes a Family, Portraits of LGBT People and Their Families. And we were in Amherst, Massachusetts, supposedly a liberal bastion. And this was 1995, before gay marriage, of course. And it caused the largest, longest controversy in the history of Amherst. 5 families ultimately sued the schools to prevent Love Makes a Family from going into the elementary schools, claiming superintendents that it would make the kids think about sex. And I'll just share the like a typical picture. Like, they were asking, are they going to be homoerotic photographs? And I said, well, if you find 2 women sitting with their kids in front of a tree, do you think about sex when you see that? And the superintendent paused and then said, yes. So we had a lot of education to do. And ultimately, it seemed like 100 meetings where I would cart the photos and the text to schools. A lot of people would be, I'm not homophobic or whatever, but our kids are, it's okay, the photographs, but not the text. We don't want them to see the words gay and lesbian or transgender. And I was like, well, we just had an exhibit before on multiracial families, which mine is. My offspring is multiracial, black and white, and everybody could pronounce the word multiracial, all these kids. And so I think they can get gay and lesbian, and in fact, almost everybody in the book, the exhibit, was local. So I said, we're not bringing in alien people. These are your soccer coaches and your teachers and your friends, actually. You may not yet know who they are in their families. But so that was sort of many, many years ago. And from there, we developed 8 photo text exhibits, 3 of which got published as books, including the one that I started when Trump got elected the day after, called Building Bridges, Portraits of Immigrants and Refugees. And that included a group of LGBT asylum seekers, which I made into a special little show. And then we had a student intern who created an exhibit on trans people. Was a student at Smith College pre-transition. And that was traveling, but it was getting very outdated. So when COVID hit, all the exhibits closed down. I wrote a book proposal thinking there's all this hatred and violence towards the trans and non-binary community, particularly of people of color. And I'm shocked and outraged and pained by seeing, I want all of our projects to be obsolete. I thought maybe back in the 1990s, maybe they would, but naive as I am, clearly it seems worse and worse right now with the legislation. So the book got accepted by Skinner House Books. And so I started working 2 years ago to meet these truly not just inspiring people, but remarkable people who were willing to share these stories. And now there's also an exhibit. It's going to come to San Francisco, by the way, and LA. And it's traveling to universities. And I will just share, because it's so important, the exhibit was just at 3 schools in our local area, elementary schools, in fact, pre-K. So now all the 3-year-olds know all the pronouns. They really get, because they had it for a month and the teachers were brilliant. I cried when I went to the post discussion of what had happened in the classrooms. Every kid, like 3-year-old, would be like, oh, that person has a black shirt on. I have a black shirt. And wow, they seem like really nice people. And then they would ask these questions that were age appropriate. I wanted so badly for cruel and horrible people, in my view, like Ron DeSantis and others that are creating the horrible climate for LGBTQ youth and their families, medically, psychologically. I wanted him and so many others like him to see what's possible, age appropriate, why it's crucial to teach gender diversity, sexual orientation diversity, and it can be done without talking about sex any more than if a pregnant heterosexual cisgendered woman was their teacher and a kid said, what's going on with your belly? And they're like 5 years old. The teacher's not going to start talking about having sexual intercourse. They're going to say something age appropriate. So that's the context of my organization, Family Diversity Projects, that has been behind all of this. And then we joined with PFLAG and Transgender Legal and Education Defense Fund to, they help support and promote this book and this exhibit. We want this exhibit in every school, every library. It's going to Purdue University. It was just at Penn State. I want so bad, bring tears to my eyes. I want so passionately for people to recognize in the humanity that we are all family, that we are all interconnected human beings.
Peggy, you just said so much. I got so many thoughts that are spinning in my head right now. Where do I start? First off, being 75 and working all that language right now, I think you are an example, okay? For so many who want to make excuses around why they can't get someone's pronouns correct or why they can't address someone as they choose to be addressed. And so, thank you. Oh. Thank you for being an example. The work is one thing, but I think us being here and people being able to hear you and say that it's hard and say that you're working at it, even with your own kiddo, as you put them, I appreciate that. Okay. I appreciate that. So thank you. Lana, when I heard Peggy talk about the book in the 90s, right? And all the controversy that happened with her book, I feel like she's talking about today. I feel like that is a mirror of what's happening. And I know you speak out and I know you're an advocate. And so I'd love to hear what you think about the climate today, of how folks are harming, truly creating harm for folks who have done absolutely nothing to them.
Yeah. I think what is happening right now is really disheartening. And I want to say that this book is like so monumental, like at a time where our community is under so much scrutiny. This is the first time that I've seen like anti-trans legislation at this level. I remember when I started my transition, although there wasn't a lot of access and opportunity and rights, I didn't have my rights being stripped away from me. And when I see what's happening in Florida, we talk about Ron DeSantis, started my transition in Florida. I lived in Florida for 13 years. That's kind of where I got my roots. And I still have so many friends that are there, trans friends, who are being impacted by what's happening right now. It's really disheartening to know that things are worse now in 2023 versus how they were in 2016 when I left. And my dream has always been to be able to like go back and support others in that space, but to see the landscape where there's bathroom bills, where folks can call the police on you for using the restroom that they deem inappropriate based off of how they assume your appearance to be or what gender. And this is happening to all folks, cis and trans. But obviously it's going after the trans folks. And when I see what's happening with trans youth, the current legislation, SB Senate Bill 254, that was proposed to block trans youth from accessing gender affirming care. There was also language that was put in there that made it a lot more rigorous for trans adults to get care. They eradicated the ability for nurse practitioners and physician assistants to write hormones. You would have to go to an MD or a DO in order to get your prescriptions. There was an informed consent letter that was proposed, which I don't know yet if they've even put it into effect. So that left so many people in limbo. I believe at the end of, actually no, the middle of May, even before they signed the bill into law, pharmacies were stopping prescriptions. And so I have friends who have been impacted by this, and they're calling me and they're like, hey, I don't know what to do. My doctor's trying to see if I can get a prescription from New York. Folks that are taking testosterone, that's a controlled substance, so level 3. There's been a lot of push with the DEA and, seeing if we can remove regulations. But it's disheartening to know that in 2023, people are having to flee their homes, having to fight for their lives, and having to be put in a very uncomfortable situation where we have trans youth that can be stripped away from their parents and from their homes, put into foster care. Parents can be seen as, abusing and harming their children for supporting them, for trying to help, And I think what was really powerful with this book was I didn't have that support in the beginning of my transition, but I have the support now from my family. And to know that I could be one of those youth that my parents could be supporting at this day and age in 2023, and for them to get penalized for supporting me, I think is horrific. And there's just so many parents who just want to do right by their children and support their kids, and to have a space and time where we have the language, we have, access and opportunity, and to have those rights being stripped away from folks is really sad. So if there's anything that I can do, I can say, speak up. My company did sponsor Pride, and unfortunately, there was a whole situation that recently happened with conservative media that made it dangerous for me to be there in person. But, those folks in these rural parts of the state and of various other states in this country, they need that visibility. They need these Pride events. They need these books. They need these conversations.
100%. And Fresh, I think this is a perfect transition into your story, because when I was reading your piece, as Lana talks about the importance of places like Pride, especially for people who live in rural environments, Pride was where you were like, oh snap, these are my people. This is what it looks like to be out, and Pride was that place for you. Can you talk about what that all meant for you in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to appreciate Lana for everything that she just said, just because I'm doing work in a different way in a different arena, and I just want to, so important. And thank you, of course, Peggy, for the book and for your work in general. There's something about being queer that, I identified probably about 14 and 15 was just more about being the authentic me. And, growing up with a lot of, doctrine around Christianity, and I actually appreciated a lot of what I learned, but I knew that if I walked into a church, I was going to melt. Like, that's what it was like for me. So going down Fifth Avenue, seeing hundreds of preachers, ministers waving and cheering us on, just brought me home to myself again. And so I also had that experience of developing queer family. Like, queer family was there. And if you don't mind me saying, because it's just on my mind, the other thing I talk about is how the trans attacks are distractions. And not everybody wants to see it that way. But are we 1.5% of the population at this point? I don't know that number, but I know there are almost 500 bills against us, and there's all kinds of stuff happening in the larger community. We're not doing the same work for homeless families right now. We're not doing the same work there's so many children in the child welfare system without family. We're not putting resources into, if you're not going to ban guns, at least create better gun laws. All we are is a really unfortunate and devastating distraction from the gazillions of dollars that are being made off of us from oil companies, from food companies, the fake inflation that's happening. I don't want to get too far into my beliefs, but it's so important. And, Peggy's statement about being 75 and maybe before you're 75, 36 years later, this person that you identified one way, you're doing this work. It's possible for everybody to want to do that work. And it's really hard to do that when we can't even love and honor ourselves.
And I just got a couple more questions for y'all, just a couple more here. Peggy, why is this book so important right now?
I can totally answer that question. Why is Authentic Selves, and then the subtitle, celebrating trans and non-binary people and their families? The word celebrating to me is a crucial element of not just sharing a lot about the painful aspects, but about the fact, again, about the humanity and the beautiful aspects of being our authentic selves, whoever that may be, and not seeing it as something, these poor, kind of like the media has portrayed LGBT people forever. It's changing. But as people to celebrate, to not just tolerate, but to celebrate. And I think that's so crucial. I mean, again, I can just tell you one quick story right now in Amherst, again, sort of full circle. About 2 months ago, the headlines of our local paper were transphobia in Amherst Middle School. And the high school students started to do some investigative reporting. Now it's gone national. And what had happened was an assistant superintendent who was very transphobic hired a friend to be a guidance counselor. He hired, I think, his daughter or relative, and they were counseling trans and non-binary students basically into conversion therapy and refusing to they were misgendering them. It was just horrifying. There's like a 50-page article that these high schoolers wrote exposing this, and last I heard they had about 50,000 views, could be way more by now. And there was a student walkout, and now literally right now in the halls of that middle school is the Authentic Selves exhibit. And as a statement by the school, they put these people on leave and working through what's going to happen with them. But to show the students there, the trans, non-binary, and all students, that we are not tolerating, we are celebrating our community of all kinds of gender identifications, sexual orientations. And I'm so proud to have the exhibit there right now when there's been this kind of horrifying discovery of what was happening to kids, and people were scared to report it. So I feel like this book has the potential. It's just a book and it's just an exhibit, and it has power when people the book is heavy. Like, it's 2 pounds full of 35 wonderful stories like Lana's and Fresh, and prefaced by forward by Jazz and Jeanette Jennings, who've been on the forefront of jazz when jazz came out on the Barbara Walters show when Jazz was like 5, now is at Harvard. People that are trying to represent and push the boundaries, and that's what I wanted to do, is say there are boundaries of who you like or who you can be kind to in this world. No, we do not have to live in a world of division and hatred. So I hope, my profound hope is that this book and the exhibit will save some lives. People will see themselves on the walls of their school or in the library, in the book. That hopefully a lot of people, I keep urging people, don't just buy one for yourself, buy several and give one to your local library. Send it to a legislator, maybe in the movable middle. Get the exhibit in your state capitol. Get your, library to show it, so that people that are not purposely coming to see an exhibit on trans and non-binary people will be kind of, here it is, right in front of you. Look in these eyes. Look in these beautiful faces. I mean, for those of you watching, Lana and Fresh, like the beauty in their faces as I'm looking at you right now. Not just the fact that you both happen to be handsome and beautiful people, but just the spirit in both of you. It just exudes in your story and it exudes on your faces. And that's what I want people to see and know.
And I know they are, and I know that they will. And Lana, why do you think this book is so important right now?
I think this book is really important because, the current legislation, the political climate that we live in, but there's so many people who need to see themselves reflected, right? And I think in order for us to know where we're going, we have to know where we're coming from. And to stamp this historical moment, this is the first year we had Pride at the White House. My big sister, Anjali Remy, was there at the White House. I see this incredible woman, like with her mother and the book at the White House, meeting President Biden. It's so important for us to see ourselves reflected back out into the world. And so these stories are a beautiful piece of history that can live on so that the next generations know what our stories were like, what we lived through, where we are now. And it's possible. I went to an event in New York last month with some folks and have parents that are not supportive. And they were like so inspired to see that they were parents who supported their queer and trans kids that were of color. And I thought that was so beautiful. I speak of my upbringing. Unfortunately, my grandparents weren't around to be a part of the book, but my mom is there, my stepdad is there, and talking about being Caribbean and also South Asian. But this was a South Asian event that I went to in New York, and there were so many incredible, beautiful parents that were just like so proud of their kids. And I think this book is so important because we need to see that. Like, we need to know that it's not just non-POC folks that support their kids, that there are people within the BIPOC community that also can love and fully support their children. Yeah, it's just important for them to see that and have the access and opportunity to these stories.
Absolutely. I think I saw that you mentioned Queer as Folk was a tie where it was like, oh, I see myself, but I don't see my whole self here. And I think this book is that it can be that to so many people. Because representation, we already know, is not the end all be all, but it's just so incredibly important that we can see a reflection, a mirror of ourselves out here in the world. And Fresh, what about you? Why do you think this book is so incredibly important?
I am because I want people to see that we're thriving. Some of us are thriving, that they can, call us names, they can try to take us down. And that many of us have been through this. Me, who's at 60 now, it's been a long journey, so worth it. I want people to stay on the path. I want them to love themselves. I want them to see themselves. And I want them to know that they are loved. And, this book that Peggy created helps people see that we're looking, we care, we're listening. And the path is open. The doors are open. Come on through, come on in, come on up. In any way that you know how, whether you want to be an activist or you want to support the animals or the planet or yourself or be a therapist, it's open. So keep on stepping, stay in community. There's so many of us out here, and yeah, yeah, I want to help people stay alive and know that they're supposed to be here. They're worthy. You are loved. That's it. You're loved. We're waiting for you. Yeah.
We can't say that louder ever. You know, we can't say that enough.
Right.
And I think because once you get to a place where you're comfortable with yourself, you know who you are, it's so easy for us to forget what it was like in that moment when you weren't that person. And there are so many who are in that moment right now.
And that's a little harder when you're trans and a person of color. Because it's almost like, because you remember every step, because it was really high. You know, so it is easier for some people, but I think in our community, many people do stay in and do the work. And even as they're, you know, like Kyler, you know, even as they're talking to Congress back when he was still tied in to the people on the street. So thank you. I just want to throw that in.
Thank you for throwing it all in, okay? And as we close out, Peggy and Lana, I want to give y'all Fresh one last thing. If there's any word that you want to give our Queer News audience, anything you want them to know about you, and then also sharing how they can follow you and support your work, I would love for us to go around and share a little bit about that. So Peggy, any last words? Tell us how they can get the book, how they can follow you, order, all the things.
So Authentic Selves, celebrating trans and non-binary people, you can get it and their families at any bookstore, hopefully your independent bookstores. But please, any of you who read it and love it, review it on Amazon, because that's important. We sold out the first printing before it was even published on May 2nd, from pre-sales. So we just need to get the word out. My Family Diversity Projects with an S.org is my website. There you can learn about all 8 of our exhibits, and you write to somebody on there. There's a forum, and it's familydiversityprojects@gmail.com. Goes right to me because we don't have the money for staff, really. It's me and the photographer who did all our other projects. She ships the boxes. She's almost 80 now. So we need young people. we need some very wealthy donor to just endow this, so we never have to ask for any money ever again. That's my prayer. And we never turn anybody down. I will say this based on finances. Anybody who wants the exhibit, we ask for donation. We even have subsidized shipping if need be. But like the Mayo Clinic once gave us $5,000 for an exhibit. A school the other day gave us $100. We're not about money. We're about trying to keep this going. I'm just about to make a 4th copy of Authentic Selves because the demand is so high right now. And it's an expensive thing to laminate and frame and print and all that. So I just, I want it to keep going. And I want everybody to support the work of creating family through love and through support, like in personal ways and in institutional ways. That's my hope.
It's already done. So it is. And so it is.
So it is.
Lana, anything you want to say to the Queer News audience that are tuned in and listening to your story today? And also, please share how they can follow you.
Yeah, you can find me, Lana Patel XOXO. I just want to leave you all with hope and inspiration and determination. And for me, I've always been someone that's been really resilient and tenacious. I hope in the future folks don't have to be resilient, that things come easier. But I've always been one to not take no. If I can get in through the front door, I get in through the back, the chimney, the window. But I always find a way to get the things that I want and that I need. And I think that's the spirit that I've always taken with me throughout my life, throughout my journey. And so I want to impart to folks, don't take no, and everything that you want is possible. It may not happen today, tomorrow, but keep sowing the seeds and you will get everything that you're working towards.
Yes, and Fresh, same.
Yeah, yeah. Love what you just said, Lana. Thanks for sharing, Peggy. Anna, thank you for having us on the show. This is so cool. Um, yeah, I just want to let folks know, like every time you inhale, like life is saying you're supposed to be here. All you got to do is inhale. It means you're worthy of everything that's good. So as Alana was saying, ask for what you need, ask for what you want, stay connected. Listen to this. Whether you're listening to podcasts like this, there's something called TGQMM. It's a transgender queer mindfulness meetup. So go meditate with people who are trans. Go play with people who are trans. Like, stay connected when you're feeling alone. And I just saw Alana Rose, who's the executive director of the of course, now I'm going to forget what it is. But if you need to call the Trevor Project or you need to call Trans Hotline, like there are people here to talk to you. We need you. We want you. So please, please try not to go to an area of harm. You can learn more about me on LinkedIn. You can look me up at Fresh Lev White on LinkedIn, or affirmativeacts.org is my website. So yeah, reach out, reach in. You can easily book time with me, and especially if you need to be loved, like that's what I do, and help you love yourself. That's my work. Thank you, Anna.
And thank you, Fresh. And I think that this body of work, Peggy, that you've created is doing just that. It's going to give so many people so much love and hope and joy, because it's no easy lift creating, right? There are creators in this world and there are consumers in this world, and we are two very different people, okay? And it takes a lot of heart to create something that's so personal. You know, asking people about their lives is so personal, and everyone that you interviewed had the courage to do so, and they understood the assignment. I can tell they understood the assignment, Peggy, and you understand yours and what you called to do here on this planet, being as airy fairy as you want to be, and we're all very grateful and blessed that you're able to do that at 75. I hope at 75. Okay, Peggy,
Yeah.
I can still be just as fierce. So thank you all for sharing your story. Thank you for being here, and I really, really appreciate y'all.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much for inviting us and for including all of us in this important story. Thank you for your work and for spreading the news and the joy.
Thank you.